This podcast is sponsored by Xgrowth. Xgrowth is the APAC ABM agency. If you and your organization are looking to land and expand enterprise and mid-market deals, Xgrowth is the agency to help. Xgrowth works with a wide range of international and global technology vendors, service providers, and B2B SaaS companies. If this sounds like something you're interested to know more about, make sure to check out Xgrowth at xgrowth.com.au. That's xgrowth.com.au and chat with the APAC ABM agency.
What's up, marketers, and welcome to another episode of the Growth Colony podcast. I'm Liza from Xgrowth to tell you that each episode we bring in B2B leaders to chat about how you can achieve those everyday wins in the marketing world. Whether you're new to the B2B game, working at a leadership level, or even just showing some interest, we know you'll love the episode. So grab a drink, get comfy, and enjoy the show.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode. I'm Shaheen Hoda with Xgrowth, and today I'm talking to Debra Sutton, Regional Vice President of Marketing for Asia Pacific at WalkMe, about how B2B marketers should change their view when it comes to attribution and approach it in a way that will strengthen their position in the organization and help them build a stronger relationship with the sales team. On that note, let's dive in. Debra, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, absolute pleasure. I'm super excited for us to have this chat because the relationship with sales is super important, and attribution also is a bit of a touchy subject, especially right now. One of the things that we've spoken previously is that you believe in relationships, and specifically relationships are kind of the fundamental element of marketing when you look at them. Can you unpack that a little bit for us and for our chat?
Absolutely. I have, and just as a disclaimer for everyone that's listening, I'm coming from the background, I'm speaking from a point of view or a perspective where I work for a software company that deals with the large commercial and enterprise space. So very B2B. Large deal sizes, long sales cycles. It's not a transactional sale. It's very much a relationship sale. And the business that I'm in and the businesses I've worked for in my career have always been like that. So apologies to anyone that maybe works in a much more transactional environment or digital environment maybe, but I'm working with people and sales teams who are really trying to engage with that C-suite audience. They're really trying to build their relationships with their C-suite audience. And so that might be a CIO or a CDO or CHRO. Those types of, personas are the ones that we would look to engage with. And so I come from that perspective. And so on that note, you really have to drive relationships. Relationships are so important. And I'm in technology, especially, again, that's coming from the perspective that I work in. I think we've been quite robotic in the way that we've marketed to our audience. I'm a really big fan of humanizing all your touch points. Like, speak to your market or your audience like humans, like people who have interests, and putting a bit more personality, tone of voice. I mean, typically in the last number of years, the sort of emails and outreach that you might get from a software or technology company is quite bland, and certainly doesn't have enormous sort of personality in it. I think the only company that's done that really, really well would be Salesforce. Right from the get-go, they humanized and made very personal marketing, and that was very different to the atypical technology software marketing of the day when they first kicked off. And Mark Benioff was the chief marketing officer for Oracle before he started Salesforce, so he knew what he was doing, and I think he is a great example of driving, a successful business through humanizing your touch points, humanizing your outreach, and treating your audience like people that you want to build a relationship with. So that's sort of that's a little taste, I guess, of how I approach a lot of things that I do.
I love that. And Debra, I mean, that's really fascinating. And we were earlier chatting about some of the campaigns that you run for marketing. I really want to dive a little bit deeper into that as well, in terms of how, if you can give examples of how you've implemented or brought that human element to build those relationships in some of your marketing campaigns, because I feel like this is something that maybe some people talk about, but usually they don't have enough data to back it up. And they're like, oh, we got to humanize stuff. But then what comes out is a lot of fluff. Can you give some example in terms of how you implement this, or if there are campaigns that you've implemented this, that you've really drove that building relationship component and human aspect of the campaign strong into the work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work for a company called WalkMe, and WalkMe is definitely a scaling, growing company. It's pretty young. It's only been on the stock exchange now, or IPO'd, for about a year and a half, I think. Maybe close to 2 years, up somewhere around that mark. But it is a brand new category, and that's the important thing to note. We do what's called digital adoption, and this is a brand new category. Gartner have just created this new category, and there's many ways to explain to people what digital adoption is, but the best way we could do it to explain it was to create a story where people could really see themselves in it. So I came up with this campaign called the WalkMe Challenge. And it was sort of a bit based on the Pepsi challenge in a lot of ways. It was, putting two people or putting someone in front of something and them sort of seeing what the difference is. And so what we did is we created these three separate videos, and we created a microsite. And in each video, we put two people, or employee contestants, as we like to call them. We gave them the same task, the same software, and then asked them to jump on and do it. And one person had WalkMe, one person didn't. But we gave them real life experiences that they would really relate to. And what that means is one of the videos is called First Day on the Job. And this is two employee contestants sit down, they're given a task. It's your first day in the job. You need to go into your HR software and update your banking details. And then once you've done that, go into your service management software or portal and order a mobile phone. Most people can relate to that, moment, that onboarding experience, maybe, that when you start a new job. And so we set them up, push go. Now, one person has WalkMe on top of their screen and on top of their software and guiding them through the whole onboarding process. And the other person is just on their own, as what would normally happen, and trying to figure it out for themselves. And the person with WalkMe can get through those two things very quickly in about 1:25. The person without WalkMe struggles and struggles and struggles, and often we just stop them and and we say, don't, we'll stop you there, and then we get them to change chairs and we get them to try each other's side. Now, the person who didn't have WalkMe gets to experience a very different end user experience, and the person that did have WalkMe gets the other side of it. And it's so fantastic watching people's reactions, responses, but we can all see ourselves in those moments. And it's a really quick and easy way to explain digital adoption and what WalkMe does, but it also, because you can see the screens of both people and et cetera during the videos, but it also shows the power of having a digital adoption strategy in your organisation, because productivity goes up, employee experience goes up through the roof. People are happy, engaged. The person without WalkMe gets so frustrated. And, we live in this age now where everyone's working from home. You don't have someone on, next to you at the desk that you can just say, hey, can you help me do this? Then those, days really are behind us in a lot of ways. So those are the sort of humanising factors that we did with this campaign. And it's been so successful for us. It's gone global. They're using it now, WalkMe using it around the world, and we also do these WalkMe challenges live at events. So we do them at our own events, we do them at conferences, and we've also had our customers ask us to come in and do it. Like large banking organisations have asked us to come and do the WalkMe challenge for their own internal staff, large, 6,000 people departments. And then so have our partners like Accenture and Deloitte have asked us to come and do the WalkMe challenge for their own consultants to show and teach and educate the market around digital adoption, because as I mentioned, it's a brand new category. But the other thing is that, we've been doing some TikToks around this as well. We made some really fun, while we were shooting the videos, we shot a couple of little TikToks on the side with them, because we had talent who were the hosts running and managing the challenges, and we used them to create some fun little TikToks, and we found that to be incredibly successful way to engage with the market as well. Highly targeted, geo-targeted, age-targeted. Like we really didn't just throw it out there to the world, and we knew the audience that we were trying to engage with over TikTok, and that was a surprisingly successful piece of the campaign as well.
I love that. For those in the B2B who haven't started looking at TikTok, make sure to take note. But that is such a great example of kind of humanizing your campaign and very clearly showing the frustrations that a user has going through the pain point that a company is solving. But let's change gears, Debra, and I want to talk about your approach to building relationships internally, especially with the sales organization. How do you approach the sales team in order to further reinforce that relationship between sales and marketing?
Yeah, and look, this is my probably number one thing. I mean, there's so many number ones, but this is, the top three, let's call it. And again, coming from the perspective where I do a marketing role where sales and marketing are very symbiotic. We need each other. And we typically, in the companies I've worked for in the past and the things I've seen, especially when I was young in my career, it was so typical in tech to see sales and marketing at war with each other. In, large multinational software companies, sales always, complaining about marketing always whinging about sales. And it seemed to me, even back then, a real lost opportunity. And I didn't really understand it. And I did come from a bit of an advertising background before I started in tech. So I really often have a service mentality, or a hat on, in a lot of ways. And because I see that as a very powerful approach, you've got to know your position in the company. And to be honest, marketing is there to help the business achieve better revenue at the end of the day, and the people who are out there closing those deals and doing those sales is the sales team. So marketing in a lot of ways is there to help support and serve the success of sales. And I say serve tentatively because that doesn't mean, to be super clear, it doesn't mean to be subservient, and it doesn't mean to lack strategy or anything like that. What it does mean is knowing that my job is to partner with sales. And I would say, as you would know, that, when you're an agency and you're partnering with a client, you're there as an advisor and you're there to help them succeed. And that is very much the approach I take with my sales organization. I'm there to help them succeed. I'm there to make sure that the activities that we're doing are aligned, that everybody is happy with them, that we have clarity of plan, but those relationships are super important. And as I mentioned, it's so good when you have a symbiotic relationship where each party, the leader of the sales organization or the region that you may be dealing with, working closely with sales. That's where, and both of you can run your organizations, together with one plan, one, North Star. That's where the magic happens.
I love it. I mean, yeah, and I think you talked about earlier in your career, but I still think it still happens, and it's still I know a lot of organizations where that relationship, it's not healthy. It's either a clash, it's a toxic relationship, it's an abusive relationship in some companies, and it still exists, and you see that drastic growth in companies that have really figured it out, and from a leadership perspective, they're aligned. But I want to touch on specifically with regards to attribution. Where does attribution come in, and how can that play a role in building that sales and marketing relationship?
Yeah, so attribution, I would have to say, when it comes to B2B relationship marketing, and again, a lot of companies can do B2B, but when you're dealing with large enterprise, the real, your Qantas, Woolworths, your CBAs, of the world, when you're really dealing with large enterprise, it's a very different sales motion. So attribution can be a bit of a dirty word, because it is very, very tricky when you're building activities based on relationship building with C-suite, with your C-level audience. The activities that you do, whether it be ABX, whether it be, hospitality, whether it be certain roundtable lunches or dinners, or, there's lots of different tactics, but you'll find most of those tactics, fantastic things can happen in all of those sort of tactics. Very hard to attribute and monitor, because so much goes on, and you'll never see the results in a short period of time. You're going to take 6 months minimum probably to see those results. So much attribution is looking at in-quarter pipe, like a campaign you did in this quarter and what were those results this quarter, which is a really poor way to look at attribution. But it's like what often happens is someone comes to a roundtable lunch, you have a fantastic facilitated discussion, and then that person goes off and has a conversation in the elevator with someone else in their office or what have you, and that person then has a conversation, and then all those other touch points, maybe they then come in through, maybe then they do a search and do a requested demo of the website or something. Who knows what then happens? But what people have missed is you've got to create the demand before you can capture the demand. So you really, when you're looking at these sort of tactics or things that you're doing that are demand creation, often you're trying to take attribution and look at them and say, were they successful? Oh, I can't see any attribution coming from them. Where they really, have done an enormous job in creating that demand for you to capture in a different way, maybe later on.
So that's a great point that you bring up, right? So how do you communicate that with the leadership? Because yes, it's, it makes sense that, hey, we've done all this activity and there are certain things that can't be measured, and therefore a lead might come through. Just like you said, they had a conversation in the elevator with somebody who attended the meeting, and they maybe then looked up, they saw something on LinkedIn organically, and they went and did a Google search and came through. How do you communicate that with the leadership so that it's not a finger pointing kind of activity where, hey, it was SEO because they Googled us, versus no, it was like it originated from that roundtable that we had. That was where the seed came back, but we can't show you that trail. How do you communicate that, and how do you kind of educate the either the sales team or even the leadership team who are looking at the finance team who's looking at where to allocate budget? How do you approach that component?
Yeah, it is a tricky one. However, what I would say, I've never had a problem with it when you have a tight partnership with your sales and your regional leaders. So it always comes back, and that's why it's in my top 3. Your internal relationships are everything. And that doesn't mean you be disingenuous. And, with your relationships, you're very deliberate in the sense that you are a partner to that business. So what happens is these activities, let's just, focus on a round table for the sake of the example right now. But, the sales leaders that were at that round table, they built relationships with people they've been trying to build for a long time. They're then able to email that person or ring that person that they hadn't been able to do, or get in front of that person. They completely understand the value of those tactics. It is never a problem. And what you will find too is the emails start bouncing around. Now, you may not have that quantitative data, but what you will have is emails bouncing around, people saying this was the best thing that we've done for such a long time, I connected with this person, I did this, whatever. This is what I find all the time. You get the feedback from the people who you're partnering with, your sales organisation for me in this instance, who are highly appreciative of the work that you're doing, of the tactics that you're employing, and the value that they are seeing being created from those. So again, you'll find that also that the pipeline is, your pipeline coverage begins to grow. So you always want to know your baseline pipeline coverage, and you want to see pipeline coverage growth and ultimately your revenue growth and quality pipeline, because if that we're going down a whole nother discussion, but they're the things that really matter again when you have alignment and trust and partnering with your business across the business, not just your sales organisation, but maybe you've got a partner and alliances organisation, and there'll be many, services organisation. All those leaders you are partnering with at all times, and even HR. A lot of the stuff we do has a knock-on effect in terms of employee engagement. Everything we do as an activity, I see, has broad-reaching motions and effects across the whole business. And so I'm always seeing myself as a partner to the business. I'm not here for my own success so that I, have a bright, shiny gold star on me. I'm here to make the business successful. And the business, as we mentioned, is a sum of many parts. So as you do activities, as we mentioned, back to the attribution, that it's sometimes tricky to follow from a bouncing ball perspective in the attribution software, the business itself understands the value.
I love that. For Debra, for those who might not be familiar with the term, I think everyone's familiar with revenue, but when you say pipeline coverage, what do you mean by pipeline coverage for some people that might not be familiar with the term?
Yes, absolutely. So in software sales, you'll definitely always find that people know that if they need to sell $1 worth of software, they need $3 worth of pipeline. So they may say 1 to 3 coverage is pretty typical, I would say. So that means that if they have a goal to sell $1, they know to sell $1 worth that they've got to have 3 times that in their pipeline of deals to hit that goal. So we're always very aware of pipeline coverage goals, because really the only thing I can do is help provide pipeline coverage. I can't close deals. A lot of activities we do hopefully help the velocity of that sales cycle, maybe faster, and maybe push it down that funnel a little bit further. But, the sales team have to close those deals. So we're here to help them drive that revenue towards that revenue goal and helping them, create that pipeline coverage they need to achieve the goals that they've set out for themselves.
Yeah, that 3x pipeline. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So, Debra, what can marketers do now, that could be with or without attribution, to maintain a strong relationship with sales and leadership? We've touched on this a little bit, where the attribution component is tricky, and it's really having that strong relationship with both parties to make sure there's a lot of alignment, and then there's not the finger pointing is reduced, Is there anything else that you think is really important for the marketing team to communicate to the sales team or to the leadership? Does anything else come to mind when it comes to building that, strengthening that relationship?
Yeah, I've wrote a little sort of cheat sheet for my team in my previous company, and I often refer back to it all the time, because one day I was like just sitting down thinking, I'm going to write this out, because I like to call them my C words, and a bit of a joke there, but really there were so many great words that start with C that really should be the foundations of doing great marketing within an organization, where you're building trust, partnership, and teamwork. And
Should we give a heads up to anyone listening if their kids around, Deborah?
Gosh, well, I'll keep it clean. There's another.
Sounds good.
So I'm going to start with curiosity, and I think that's where everyone should start. You always start with curiosity. So if when you want to build a relationship with your sales organization, this is where I think a lot of the the headbutting between the departments goes on, because there's a shared lack of curiosity. I think curiosity is so important. Seek first to understand. I think that's one of the 7 habits of highly effective people or something. Be curious. Be curious about the business. Be curious about why they think they would like to do some sort of tactic that they would like to see done in their, in marketing. And I think being curious is a very, very powerful approach to any relationship that you're in. So staying curious is really important. And then I've got plenty of them, so I'll just touch on a couple. But the other ones would be consultation. So again, if you're in a partnership, you just don't go off and do your own thing without having a chat with someone. You need to, if you're in a partnership, whatever that partnership is, you consult with the other person. Hey, I'm thinking that this would be a good idea. What do you think? And I think it's going to be a good idea because of these reasons. And they'll go, absolutely, I'm completely on board. I support that. Or they might go, well, actually, sounds good, but actually we'll have a problem with that because of this, this, and this. And then they know then that you're a partner with them, that you are partnering. So consultation, super important. Then communication and clarity, they're sort of similar, but you have to communicate all the time. Like, marketing departments get very busy, whether you're the marketing department of one or marketing department of many, you're busy. And you need to communicate all the time, as much as you can, clearly, with clarity, around what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what's happening. So everyone knows what's going on. Communicate, over-communicate. So important. But do it in a way that's clear, simple, like as less words as possible. And what I might mean by that, an example would be, I always have a slide deck. I always have slides around every single activity that's going on, a very simple set of slides. And if I'm talking in a meeting or doing something, I can easily pull up that deck and just go, oh, this is this activity, and just show the slide and talk to it to help, provide that clarity. Another example might be, you should be sending emails out saying, hey, team, we're sponsoring this thing, or we're out here, we're doing this campaign's in market, whatever it is. Simple emails that, again, you don't need. You want to do things succinctly. You don't want to, make it hard to digest. It has to be easily digestible, but you want to communicate all the time. And then people feel like they know what's going on and they understand the work you're doing. So, and we could go on and on, but maybe the last one I might touch on that I really like to talk about is cohesion. And when you've got that curiosity, you've got good communication, providing really good clarity around what's going on, why you're doing it, you'll find that you are cohesive across the board, that everyone is working together, and that you're able to really accelerate the growth that you're having, because everyone's on the same page. And that brings in the other C words like culture are really important. But yeah, so there's some of the things that I work at. And maybe I'll touch on last one that I might talk about is commitment. And we haven't touched on this at all yet, but I have a deep commitment to excellence. So deeply committed to excellence. So if we're going to do something, we will do it really, really well. And that matters because that comes back to building trust in your partnership. Your partner in the business, there's all partners across the business in the various different departments or organisations, then trust you. They know that you're committed to excellence. They know that you've collaborated, you've consulted, you've communicated well, you've provided clarity and cohesion, and then you've delivered at a great level of excellence. So I think they're all the important things to focus on.
I love that. That is, I love we had 6 of the C's. So that is an awesome collection and points for anyone to remember. I mean, I have curiosity, consultation, communication, cohesion, culture, and commitment. That is such a solid list. Thanks for sharing that, Debra.
Have you read the State of ABM and APAC report yet? If you have, you'll know that 59% of marketing leaders are intending to increase their ABM investment in the coming year. Even bigger news is 0% of survey respondents are going to decrease their investment. It's an exciting time for ABM in the region. Discover the state of account-based marketing in APAC today. Download the full report at abm.xgrowth.com.au/report. That's abm.xgrowth.com.au/report.
Now, Debra, before we wrap this up, I have a couple of rapid fire questions that I want to ask you. Are you ready to go through those?
Let's go.
Okay. I know you're a reader. What is one resource? This could be a book, but it could also be a blog, a podcast, a talk, whatever it is, that has fundamentally had a massive impact on the way you work or you live. What comes to mind?
Ooh, well, I do love a good podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Love a great podcast. And I like to listen to podcasts if I'm traveling or whatever. Maybe if I'm on a long car drive even I will put on a podcast. And there's lots of different ones I like, and depending on what I'm sort of feeling like in terms of do I want to listen to a business one or just a general, interesting one. Lots of people love true crime. I'm not such a true crime, listener. No, I'm not against it, but I just don't do much of it. I love a podcast called The Knowledge Project. It's this guy named Shane Parrish. He has fantastic people that on, every couple of weeks or however many episodes he does, but they're excellent and they're real deep dives. Like they go for about an hour, sometimes up to 2 hours. They just really deep dive and people from all walks of life, but people who have really who are known to be experts in their field at all times, and super interesting. I really enjoy that one, and I can sort of listen to it for a bit and then catch up. If I might only get through a third of it or something, come back to it. And I like that. And there's a couple of other ones called like The Moth, which is just real people telling real stories on stage. It's been a famous one for many, many years. So yeah, and then there's a few others, but I think The Knowledge Project is right now my go-to because it's always great content. They're long and I can just come in and out of them pretty quickly.
I was listening to The Knowledge Project last week.
Were you?
And I was listening to the episode that he did with Alan Mullally,
yes,
who took over Ford. And this guy was a superhero of my finance professor when I was doing my MBA.
Yes.
And I was like, I need to listen to this.
Yes.
And it did not disappoint. Not disappoint.
I'm the same. Look, just as an aside, in my previous company, when COVID hit, I created very quickly a campaign locally called the Leaders Lounge. And it was designed again because I've often got focus on engaging with our C-level audiences. And what was interesting during that period was management and leaders had never gone through a difficult period like that or of sort of chaos, because we'd never had a recession in Australia for 30 years. There'd never been some pivotal point like that had created enormous change and disruption in our market before. And so people weren't armed. They didn't have experience. So I put on this thing called the the Leaders Lounge. And because I had budget, because, went into COVID, we couldn't spend on other things. I was able to reallocate my spend, did a great pivot, as we like to say.
Great pivot.
A great pivot, and we did them online. And my first guest was Al Mulally.
No way.
Yeah. And so he was phenomenal. I love Al Mulally, and I was so excited to see that he was on the Knowledge Project, because I know a lot about him. I'd researched him deeply before I used him in my Leaders Lounge, and he was talking live with our audience. It was just phenomenal. We had some phenomenal guests on that Leaders Lounge, but what's really interesting to me is to see that he's sort of made a resurgence recently, and I think that's because of the uncertainty we're seeing with maybe a recession looming and et cetera, and so people are leaning back into his learnings and the knowledge he's got to bring around that.
That's such an interesting point. You're right, because he turned Ford around from almost going bankrupt and losing billions of dollars, and I was surprised when I saw that name, because I hadn't heard that name for, I don't know, 10 years.
Yes.
And I was like, of course. Mulally was a big character, but it's a very interesting observation. I love that. Question number 2 is, what if you could give one advice to B2B marketers, what would it be?
Well, we sort of talked through it a bit, but so I've got 6 words, which would be: stay curious, be excellent, care deeply. And we haven't really gone deeply into my, be excellent moments, but it is a very big part of my modus operandi, really, in a lot of ways. But so stay curious, be excellent, care deeply. You don't have to, when it comes to being excellent, it doesn't mean that you have to be the absolute best at everything. It just means that you set a high bar for yourself, and you reach towards that at all times in whatever you're doing, whatever that may be. And that really relates to the next one, which is caring deeply, because I think you'll never succeed with great partnering with your business, great relationships, great marketing, unless you care. You have to care deeply about the results and about the business at large. And so you're sort of thinking outside yourself a little bit and caring deeply about the business that you're serving.
I love it. Question number 3.
Yeah.
Who are some of the influencers that you follow?
So I love listening to, we talked about the Knowledge Project, and there's some great leaders that have spoken on that, like Al Mulally. I love his teaching. If anyone is listening and doesn't know anything about Al Mulally, go have a listen to the Knowledge Project. He's a brilliant man, really has had great results with his approach to work and the way he does it. There's another person I interviewed on the Leaders Lounge. Again, we had fantastic guests. We had, Julia Gillard. I had Gail Kelly, the ex-CEO of Westpac. We had Adam Grant, for those who know who Adam Grant is. Like, I did the most amazing group of people. But there was Alan Mulally was one of my favourites, and my first on that Leaders Lounge program that we ran for a while during COVID. But another person I was so impressed with, and still love, listening to him if he's on someone else's podcast, is a guy named the Admiral William McRaven. Now, he was sort of renowned because he was the admiral that led the mission that captured or killed Osama bin Laden. But he was a Navy SEAL. He's retired now, but he was the head of the Navy SEALs. He was featured in that movie Captain Phillips, and because they are the crew that sort of came in and saved Captain Phillips. He's got so many things to his name, he could go on and on. But he was, for the fact he was this, admiral in the Navy, but, a Navy SEAL, and the things I'm sure that he's seen and had to do, he's got an amazing approach to life and to leadership. And he did a commencement speech, as they call them in the US, and that's very famous, called "Make Your Bed." And for those who haven't seen it, and he is brilliant, and I so enjoyed talking with him. And when I was researching and getting him prepared and briefing him for our Leaders Lounge, he's fabulous. Some real lessons I've taken from the things he talks about. So he's definitely, along with Alan Mullally and a few other people that I really admire.
I mean, the caliber of the people that you're talking about here is just astronomical, Debra. So, I mean, later on, maybe after the call, I want to hear more of your secrets of getting these people.
Yeah.
But last question, Debra. Last question that I have is, what is something that excites you about B2B today?
So many things. I mean, firstly, we're back, face to face. I think it's great. Everyone was getting a bit of that digital fatigue, I think. So, and it's so important when it comes to relationship building. We know that, there's only so much you can do from the other side of a Zoom. Everything's almost better if you can be in the room where it happens. But it's, so that's great. I do, if we try to circle back all the way to where we started with attribution, and I like the fact that sanity is now prevailing. We've got this this guy named Chris Walker, who runs a podcast for a company that he created called Refine Labs. And he's really creating this revolution around the thinking of attribution, specifically for B2B marketing, and where, the marketing attribution software has its place, but also bringing a bit of sanity back, because we did go a little bit off the rails, I think, where we just were so data-led, and, we need to be data-informed. The data informs us. It doesn't always have to lead us, because if you, as we've just talked about, if you only look at the attribution you're seeing from the data, from your attribution software, and you make choices around which activities are the best ones and which are, your performers or whatever, I think you're going to not get the best results that you can for your business. Again, depending on what your business is, and I'm coming from the perspective of what mine is, but I think you should be very careful and remember that it isn't a exact science, and you've got to see things as a holistic, and it certainly has its place, but it's not the whole. It's just a bit of a sum.
I love it. Debra, this has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed our chat. I think there is just so much insight that you've shared, from the building a relationship with salespeople and the sales organization, attribution, the core pillars and the 6 C's. There's been so much, and thought leadership and people that you've talked to. So I really appreciate. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and for your time. And I'm sure a lot of listeners are going to feel the same thing. So thank you so much.
Thanks. It's been great talking with you too. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Today's episode of Growth Colony was produced by Alexander Hipwell and Liza Maywald. It was edited by Dave Samito, with additional editing by Liza Maywald and music arrangement by Alexander and Liza. Special thanks to Tina Wabe. We couldn't make the show without you. Growth Colony is hosted by Shaheen Hoda, Director of Growth at Xgrowth. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Do you think you'd be a great guest or just keen for a chat? Send through an email at podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's all for now. We'll catch you next week, right here on Growth Colony.